We just talked a lot about the FCC, about government censorship. Usually what happens in these cases is they pick a figurehead. They go after him or her, try and make an example, to send a chilling message across all of media. Now, one of the most prominent anti-Iran war voices on the right, Tucker Carlson, is saying that the CIA has been spying on him, his communications, and may be preparing a criminal referral as a result of some discussions that he's had with the Iranian regime. Let's take a listen.
So the other day I found out that the CIA is preparing some kind of criminal referral against me, a crime report, to the Department of Justice on the basis of a supposed crime I committed. What's that crime? Well, talking to people in Iran before the war. They read my texts. So the crime under consideration apparently would be the Foreign Agent Act or something like that, acting as an agent of a foreign power. And I don't expect this to go anywhere. I'm not too worried about an actual criminal case against me for a bunch of reasons. One, I'm not an agent of a foreign power. Unlike a lot of people commenting on U.S. politics and global affairs, I have only one loyalty, and that's the United States, and have never acted against it. Its interests are the only interests I care about because I'm from here and I have a lot of kids. So that's not a concern. I've also never taken money from anybody. Don't need it, don't want it, and that's provable. And moreover, it's my job to talk to everybody all the time and try and figure out what's happening around the world. That's literally what I do for a living. And I'm not going to stop doing that, nor should I don't think. I'm also an American. I can talk to anybody. I have no secrets to divulge. So legally, I think the case is ludicrous, and I doubt it will even become a case. I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons, though, and they're pretty obvious. One is that countries tend to become more authoritarian in wartime. It's just the nature of war. People are dying. The stakes are high. People's emotions have risen to a very high point, to a crescendo. And so there's much less tolerance for any kind of dissent in the homeland. The irony, of course, is the United States fights wars on behalf of freedom, but there's always less of it here in our country during war. So that's a widely recognized phenomenon, and it's likely to happen now too. Another point to make that is worth knowing is that the USIC, the intelligence agency, spy on Americans. Now, you probably knew that, and it's been revealed a lot, including by Julian Assange and Ed Snowden, both of whom are threatened with death for revealing it, but everyone knows. But it's probably a little more widespread than most people understand. And it's likely that things like that will begin to happen at greater scale now. So you should just know that going forward. Thanks.
I think that is incredibly, obviously, not only newsworthy, but indicative, combined with the FCC warning that we just gave to everybody about what this enhanced sort of wartime censorship is going to look like, Crystal. So, for example, and let's actually zoom out, because what are the Zionists claiming? They're saying, oh, well, he committed treason by talking to the Iranians. Well, if that's treason, then you're going to have to lock up basically every reporter who's ever spoken to the Iranians, including CBS News, which had the Iranian foreign minister, NBC News, which just had the Iranian foreign minister. Part of a natural reportage is actually reaching out to people who, yes, many times are America's enemies or people who you are at war with. Why do we do it? And why is it actually incumbent upon us to do so? The reason why is to give the American people a full picture of what we're actually doing. Otherwise, you only have to rely on Pete Hegseth and General Kane and Donald Trump to tell us what's actually happening. And as you can all see in front of you, in the information age, the biggest threat to their narrative is the truth and alternate perspectives, and especially in an already unpopular war. So no, per Tucker, he may not be getting criminally charged, but the fact is, by the way, this has not been denied by the CIA. The administration has not denied any of this. They've had more than 24 hours now at this point to do so. If it was BS, I think they would say so. And I think this is really dangerous. And it also highlights, especially for people like us, we're reaching out to foreign officials all the time. Iran, if you're listening, I'll talk to you anytime. But it does demonstrate that we are under not only surveillance from our own government, but possible criminal and legal liability in this case, specifically for just trying to inform the American people. They tried to do this under WikiLeaks. Remember, this is a bipartisan thing that we've seen in the past, and this is why it's so dangerous to get into these types of wars in the first place.
Yeah. And this is why, we've always been against these conversations about like, oh, you platform this person or you platform that person, because this is where it ends up like, oh, how dare you speak to these, adversarial countries? And it's meant to make such reporting scandalous, and in the Trump administration's case, make it outright apparently illegal. Let's put E2 up on the screen, because there was some elaborate, trying to concoct after the fact 4D chess that Trump was engaged in here, allegedly. So this person says, and this got, by the way, tons of retweets and views, and everyone like really bought into this. This person says, this photo of Tucker in the Oval Office with Trump is hilarious in hindsight. Trump knew Tucker was talking to Iran, so he invites him to the Oval Office before the strike, knowing Tucker will run straight back and relay it. Iran sees this photo, thinks Tucker has Trump's ear, thinks Trump is bluffing. Meanwhile, Trump's sitting there smiling because he wanted them to believe it. Tucker's ego sells the deception. Khamenei buys it. And just like that, Tucker unknowingly helps take out the supreme leader, and now America's biggest traitor, meaning Tucker Carlson, may be heading to prison. Perfectly played. Now, let me just ask you a question. Has anything about this war made you think that Trump is playing some sort of 8D chess and elaborately planning out these intricate, brilliant moves, etc.? No. It has maybe been the dumbest war in all of human history. This man launched a war in the Middle East and did not think through what it would do for oil prices or the Strait of Hormuz. It is literally the most basic thing of all time. And yet you think this was all some elaborate, brilliant chess master style plot? I mean, it's just utterly absurd on its face.
Yeah, this is Zionist fan fiction. Let's call it for what it is. Also, reporter Mark Caputo over at Axios, he has a view, by the way. Even he's like, guys, this is total bullshit. He's like, I spoke to people in the White House. He's like, none of this happened. They had a meeting. Tucker said, please don't strike Iran. And the president explained various different things as to why he was either, thinking he was weighing in that direction. And then the meeting ended. That's how it went. There was no some grand plan that they want to describe here. I mean, what they really want is to see their enemies in prison. That's it. They want to see their political enemies. They want the state weaponized against them. They're ginning up these same like jingoistic terms in which we're not supposed to be able to talk or consider the viewpoint of the people we are literally in a war with, and that may help us understand exactly what we're doing, what the terms are, and what some of the things being laid out by the Pentagon, whether they're true or not. That's vitally important in a time of war. When you lose it, you lose the ability to process information itself. And so I think the fact that CIA is engaging in this type of activity is already a deep threat, to the United States. By the way, they're not even supposed to be spying on U.S. citizens. Not that anybody even cares at this point, right? In the entire discussion.
Well, if he's and this is where so many of the Patriot Act abuses just become so clear, because part of what that enabled them to do is, if you're talking to someone we deem an enemy or a terrorist, then we're allowed to sweep up your communications. Exactly. And so that could be what's going on here. I mean, I will say, like, in the same Mark Caputo report, he says this isn't happening in terms of spying. He says this isn't happening in terms of the criminal charges. I don't know. So that's the denials coming from the government. I don't know what's really going on here, but the fact of the possibility of this, and I don't really see a self-interested reason why Tucker would lie about this. I agree. If anything, it puts him in a weird spot, because frankly, listen, when I look at this and when I look at Tucker's overall commentary on the Iran war, to which he is very opposed, there's one word that very rarely comes out of his mouth, and that is Trump. And it's like, he wants to put this all on Israel. It's all Israel's fault. And Israel dragged us into this. Israel's war. And it's like, there is no doubt that Israel had an interest in this war, that they were pushing for this, et cetera. We talk about it ad nauseum on this show. There is also no doubt that Donald Trump also wanted this war. The reasons are a bit mysterious, right? I think the best we can come up with is high on his own supply after Venezuela, thought the 12-day war went great, loves the spectacle of all the military grandeur, loves to see things blow up on TV and to have that kind of power in his hands, is thinking about his legacy, et cetera. Perhaps there's an Epstein Files connection as well. I certainly don't rule that out. But at the end of the day, The president of the United States surrounded himself with a bunch of sycophants who were too afraid to tell him the truth, got himself bought in, hopped up on Lindsey Graham and Israeli propaganda, and decided to launch this war. And it is in his hands. It is his fault. And I think it is frankly pathetic at this point that Tucker can't say that clearly. I was sympathetic to the argument leading up to this that, oh, he's trying to maintain access and he wants to be able to have influence on the inside. Okay, you tried and you failed. That's where we are now. So why are we still pursuing this strategy? And so when you put on a video in Tucker's case, which again, why I don't think this is self-interested because it makes him look kind of bad. You put out this video claiming that Trump's CIA is spying on you and Trump's DOJ is planning on filing criminal charges against you. And you can't say anything about the president of the United States who is leading this institutions. I mean, I just think it's like, come on, man, when are you going to actually be real about the man that you supported 3 times to be in the Oval Office? You were sitting there next to him at the RNC. You pushed for him. When are you going to have the moment to say, you know what? I was wrong about this guy. I fucked up. Like there is, I have some small culpability for pushing this guy into the Oval Office multiple times. When is that going to come? Because, to me, it still seems like he's hiding the ball, trying to avoid culpability for this president and by extension for himself.
I think that they are playing a very difficult game. They look at it exactly like you said, as trying to maintain some sort of influence with the White House and trying to push things in that direction. But and here's actually what I've learned. So do we have the Mark Levin thing? Can we put that up there on the screen? So Donald Trump issues this long screed about Mark Levin, about how he's the greatest, about how he's real MAGA, about how Megyn Kelly is bad, basically the subtext for calling him micro penis Mark. What do you learn from that? Is that Mark Levin had a view. Mark Levin hated Donald Trump. He literally said he would never vote for him in 2016. I believe he supported Ron DeSantis in the 2024 primary. When Donald Trump does things that Mark Levin likes, he gushes and gives him praise. When he does things that he doesn't like, he actually puts out, tweets and campaigns against it and calls and all that. What you learn from that is that people who are actually critical, let's say if they're part of the coalition or not, when they have a view and they force that view very, very, very forcefully, they win. The anti-war right, let's say specifically in the lead up to Midnight Hammer and also here with the strikes with Iran, everything has to be couched in, oh, but Mr. President, you're so great, you're my friend, etc., right? That's what they do. And then when they do something that you don't like, then if you're not willing to hit them in the way that Mark Levin and many of the other critics hit, then they view you as somebody who's always going to be part of that coalition. And I've learned this lesson, I think, really during Midnight Hammer and ongoing forward. I do think that a breaking point, if you will, at a certain point, it has to come soon. We're already seeing it with a lot of the MAGA OGs. I saw Milo, a few others. They're like, it's over. The people who were there literally from 2015, long before many others were. I don't know yet whether that's indicative of anything, but at the end of the day, if you're not willing to withdraw your vote or withdraw your support, withdraw and actually deeply criticize somebody, I don't think that you have a lot of power in Washington. And I've seen that now play out over and over again with a lot of these neocons who hated Donald Trump. And now that he does the stuff that they want, they're his greatest champion. Right? I mean, he's like the savior, literally, and the messiah in the way that they all talk about him. But they were absolutely willing to trash him whenever he didn't do what they want him to do. And I've learned that especially over the years. Like, if you really want sources in Washington, you need to criticize them because then they'll call you and be like, no, you're wrong. This is what I'm saying. If you just write fluff pieces for them, they're like, oh, this person's a joke. We could just feed him anything. And I've seen it play out. Unfortunately now.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. I mean, I think of the same thing with the AOC on the left, if you want to take that perspective, constantly trying to be good with leadership and not criticize too hard. And it's like, because of that, it really diminished her power. It was not a strategy that was effective. So to the extent that your goal here is to maintain influence and access, first of all, to my point, you failed. That access did not get you anywhere. We are in this war now. And if that is not a principled red line for you, I don't know what it is. What is? So what are you still maintaining your access for at this point? Second of all, it does not actually confer you power, right? You've had Marco Rubio himself ran against Trump in 2016, the whole little Marco thing. I mean, just absolutely vitriolic rhetoric. Ted Cruz, same thing, vitriolic rhetoric back and forth between them. But Trump, if you suck back up to him and give him his flowers for doing what you want later on, he's going to let you back in the circle. I think there's another concern here, though, too, with Tucker specifically, who's a podcaster, influencer, and also may have presidential ambitions. I don't know. He floated that recently, how he'd love to get on a presidential debate stage versus Ted Cruz. You're walking a tricky line with the Trump base because it is a cult. And the one thing they care about, and this is what Ron DeSantis, crashed into the rocks of, where do you stand on the issue of Donald Trump? And so you can criticize Kushner, you can criticize the advisors, you can criticize the Israelis, but there is a concern that if you directly criticize Donald Trump the way that like a Marjorie Taylor Greene does, or Thomas Massie does, that you are going to be, cast out permanently, and you're going to be a Liz Cheney type figure, you're going to be persona non grata. And so you're going to lose that base of support, because when Trump says, I am MAGA and everything I say is what MAGA is, and that's the end of the story, he is correct about that. So I think that's the other part of the calculation that is going on here. But again, if you're saying the CIA is spying on you and the DOJ, they're trying to throw you in prison, and you can't man up and name the person who is the head of those agencies and who they are all taking marching orders from because he's installed all of his loyalists. I just think it looks pathetic, frankly.
I think the turn that you want may be coming sooner than you think, or I could be wrong. I really don't know. Maybe they'll be like David Sachs. So let's talk about Sachs.
Really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.